Have you ever felt that that electric current in the air, that feeling? You know, that sense of anticipation, so thick you could almost taste it. Like, what if that feeling could be, I don't know, bottled, refined, and then like deliberately woven into the stories you experience or even the stories you create?
You're touching on something really fascinating there, something um, so visceral, so real, but also often intangible when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about that sudden shock or jump scare, right? It's more about that slow, creeping unease, that almost pregnant pause before a truly critical moment. Or, that unspoken pressure in a tense conversation where one wrong word, a single misstep, could unravel everything.
Absolutely. And it's making me think about a tabletop RPG session I was in recently. We were exploring this ancient temple and well, the rumors were that there was this powerful entity like guarding its heart dormant for
I
centuries.
see where this is going.
Right. So for those who haven't delved into tabletop RPGs like, Dungeons and Dragons, the DM, the dungeon master basically, they narrate the whole story, control all the non-player characters, set the scene.
Right. They're the architect of the world.
Exactly. And our DM, they had built this incredible atmosphere as we made our way through these crumbling halls. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive, and the only sounds were like our footsteps echoing and our own hushed whispers. We finally reached the central chamber, and there it was on a raised dais, this intricately carved chest. As our party's mage stepped forward to examine it, the torches all around the room, they started flickering violently, and this deep, resonant hum filled the air.
Oh, wow. I can feel the tension building already just listening to you describe it.
Right. And we couldn't see anything, not yet, but the feeling, that sense of impending danger, it was palpable. We had no idea what we were about to face, what it could do, how we might even survive. The tension was immense. We were all exchanging these nervous glances, getting ready for a fight, senses on high alert. It was that moment, that point of absolute uncertainty, standing on the precipice of the unknown, that really got to us.
And that feeling, that experience you're describing, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're exploring the art of building and maintaining tension in storytelling. Our main source for this deep dive is How to Build and Maintain Tension in Your Dungeons & Dragons Campaigns from LitRPG Reads. But, and this is important, the core principles we're looking at today, they aren't just for tabletop games. Understanding how tension works can really enrich how we experience stories in all forms. Novels, films, even real-life situations.
So, to kind of break this down a bit, when we say tension in a tabletop RPG or any narrative, what are we really talking about? It's more than just like immediate danger, right?
Absolutely. The article defines tension as that suspense that builds, that anticipation before a significant event, that invisible thread pulling us along, making us need to know what happens next. What's really interesting is how they talk about tension existing in that space between certainty and chaos. To that balance between what the characters know and what they fear, that interplay of hope and dread, the possibility of success, but also the threat of failure. Think of it as the thread connecting the present moment to a future filled with possibilities, both good and bad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about a monster suddenly appearing, it's about the possibility of it appearing, the not knowing, and the weight of what's at stake.
Exactly. And from a psychological perspective, tension taps into our primal fears and desires. Whether we're players in a game or readers engrossed in a book, we become invested in those characters. We fear for them. We want them to succeed. Tension becomes a conduit for those emotions. But, and the article cautions against this, tension isn't something to be overused. Too much tension can be overwhelming, lead to frustration. It's about striking that balance, amplifying the narrative, not derailing it.
Got it. So, since tension can take different forms, what are some of the types of tension you typically find in D&D, according to the article?
The article breaks it down into a few key categories. First up is physical tension. This one's pretty straightforward. It's the tension that arises in combat, in survival situations, basically when characters are facing a direct physical threat, like, navigating a dangerous landscape or encountering a trap. Your temple example, the flickering torches, the resonant hum, those were precursors to potential physical danger.
Right, that sense of imminent harm.
Then there's social tension. This time, the stakes are less about physical safety and more about the dynamics between characters. Think political intrigue, tense negotiations, moral dilemmas that force players to take sides. In those scenarios, a single word, a gesture, can have major consequences.
A different kind of pressure, more psychological than external.
Right. Next, we have narrative tension. This type is built through mysteries, through those looming consequences, hints that foreshadow future events. like a prophecy with multiple interpretations. It's the what does this all mean kind of tension, the big picture stuff that keeps you invested in the story.
So the what's going to happen next factor.
Exactly. And finally, you have mechanical tension. This is more specific to games with set rules like D&D. Resource scarcity is a big one. A wizard running low on spells, a fighter with very few hit points left, or trying to disarm a trap with only seconds on the clock.
Ah, so it's not just the story of the trap, it's the game mechanics adding to that pressure.
Precisely. And the article makes a point of saying that the most captivating game experiences often come from a blend of these different types of tension. A session might flow from a tense combat encounter to a tense negotiation, ending on a narrative cliffhanger. It keeps things dynamic.
That makes sense. So we've got the types of tension, but what's the driving force, the core element that makes it all work? The article really emphasizes the role of uncertainty.
Uncertainty is presented as the backbone of tension. It's that question, what will happen next, that keeps us hooked. Unpredictability is the engine. When players can't be sure if an NPC is trustworthy or if a familiar location has become dangerous, it raises the stakes.
Makes sense. If everything's predictable, there's no tension.
Right. But, and this is important, you can't have constant uncertainty. If players feel lost, with no agency, it becomes frustrating. It's about finding that balance. Enough familiarity to make meaningful choices, but with a good dose of the unexpected thrown in.
So how can a DM or any storyteller effectively introduce uncertainty? The article has a bunch of examples.
Yeah, tons. Unreliable NPCs, shifting objectives mid-quest, limiting the information players have access to, red herrings. You can use cryptic clues that require effort to decipher, or environmental changes that turn the familiar into something unsettling.
What about things like unpredictable magic or situations with no clear right or wrong answer?
Absolutely. Those are great. When magic is erratic or when there's moral ambiguity, it forces players to really think on their feet.
Yeah.
It adds layers of complexity and uncertainty to their decision-making. They have to constantly evaluate, reassess the situation. The article mentions variable consequences for actions, factions with hidden agendas, unexpected repercussions of player choices, even random events like a sudden storm.
So the key takeaway is to keep players guessing, but not leave them feeling completely helpless.
Exactly. It's about prompting them to think critically, to analyze, to come up with creative solutions.
So we've got a good grasp of tension, its forms, and the importance of uncertainty. How do we actually create tension in a narrative? The article outlines several techniques.
Pacing is a big one. The article describes it as the silent conductor, orchestrating the flow of tension. You need those peaks of intensity, those moments that leave players breathless, but you also need the valleys, the moments of calm where they can breathe, strategize, and prepare for the next big moment.
Makes sense. Constant high alert would be exhausting. You need that ebb and flow.
Exactly. Then there's shifting environments, taking a familiar location and revealing a dangerous aspect to it that can really amplify tension. And of course, using music and sound effects strategically can really enhance the atmosphere. The article also talks about character-driven moments where the tension is tied to personal stakes, and of course, surprise, that element of the unexpected, which is so crucial for keeping things fresh.
The article dives pretty deep into pacing for maximum suspense. What are some of the key takeaways there?
It stresses the importance of variability. You need to alternate between action and calm. Each high-stakes moment should feel earned. Think of it like a roller coaster. You need that slow climb to make the drop more thrilling. Gradual escalation of threats is important too. Layer the challenges, make them progressively more significant. And cliffhangers. Ending a session on a cliffhanger is a fantastic way to keep players on the edge of their seats until next time.
And they offered some practical tips for pacing, right?
They did. Things like switching between action-heavy and character-focused scenes, inserting character-driven discussions, using plot twists sparingly, employing foreshadowing, giving players agency over the pace through their choices, using cliffhangers effectively, employing vivid descriptions during tense moments, varying the pace within a session, ensuring surprises are impactful, allowing for moments of levity, gradually introducing danger, clearly closing one plot line while hinting at another, ensuring each session feels like it contributes to the overall story, and adapting the pacing to your specific group of players. It's about finding that sweet spot.
And another key element for cranking up the tension seems to be time pressure.
Absolutely. When you introduce time constraints, you create a sense of agency. Players have to make decisions quickly. Hesitation can have consequences. It can be a literal countdown, like a ticking bomb, or a more implied sense of urgency.
But the article cautions against overusing this,
It
right?
does. If everything's a race against the clock, it loses its effectiveness. The article lists ways to instill time-based tension, like countdowns, approaching deadlines, in-game calendar events, random weather changes that affect travel time, enemy reinforcements, limited daylight hours, scheduled NPC meetings, the arrival of a powerful creature, or even debilitating effects that worsen over time.
So many options. We talked about uncertainty earlier. How can a DM actually leverage player uncertainty to build tension?
Well, one way is to give players only partial information, make them work to piece together the puzzle. You can also use unreliable narrators, NPCs whose accounts might be biased or deliberately misleading. Red herrings are another great tool. It's about making players question everything, keeping them on their toes.
The article offered even more specific examples for this, didn't it?
Yeah, things like conflicting testimonies from different NPCs, ambiguous moral choices, mysterious artifacts, cryptic dreams, secretive organizations, unpredictable locales, wild magic, natural disasters with strange patterns, enemies with unknown powers, interactive puzzles with multiple solutions, quests with vague objectives, alliances that could fall apart at any moment, and coded messages to decipher. It's about making the players feel like they're in a world where anything could happen.
But as we said before, it's about finding that balance. Make them uncertain, but not so uncertain they feel paralyzed.
Right. It should encourage them to think critically, to come up with theories and solutions, to be proactive.
Another interesting aspect the article goes into is resource scarcity. How does that play into tension?
When players are low on resources, every decision matters more. You can't just rely on brute force or magic to solve every problem. You have to think strategically, conserve resources, consider the long-term consequences. It shifts the game from a power fantasy to a more desperate struggle.
The article had a whole list of different types of resource scarcity, too.
It did. It mentioned spell slots, food and water, hit points, gold, ammunition, even in-game time.
Yeah.
Then there's the level of your allies, your energy and stamina, your ability to interact with the environment, how many uses you have left on magical items, the morale of the group, even access to shelter.
Wow, that's comprehensive. So it's not just about making the game harder, it's about making every choice more meaningful.
Right. When resources are plentiful, you can be careless. When they're scarce, every action becomes a calculated risk.
The article also talks about the importance of storytelling and tension in narrative design.
It does. A good story weaves tension throughout its arcs. When the pacing of the story matches the ebb and flow of tension, it creates a much more immersive experience.
So the narrative itself should have its own rising and falling tension to keep people engaged.
Exactly. It's like chapters in a book or acts in a play.
And then there's the idea of building mystery and intrigue. It seems like that's a more long-term approach to tension.
Yeah, long-lasting mysteries can be very effective. The satisfaction of finally solving a complex mystery after many sessions is a great feeling. The key is to reveal the mystery gradually, to offer clues that are both satisfying and raise further questions.
And the article gave some really cool methods for building these mysteries.
It did. It talked about cryptic NPCs, recurring symbols, lost histories, rumors and dreams, layered story arcs, strange artifacts, puzzles, prophecies, secretive factions, unsolved events, personal quests, political intrigue, red herrings, haunting visions, weird objects, and hints of lost civilizations. It's all about those unanswered questions.
And that leads us to foreshadowing and dramatic irony.
Foreshadowing is all about those hints and whispers of things to come. It builds anticipation and makes those big reveals feel both surprising and inevitable. It's like planting seeds that grow into something bigger.
And they gave a bunch of ways to do that too, right?
Oh yeah. Prophetic dreams, recurring imagery, callbacks to past events, omens, cryptic predictions, environmental changes, prophecies, repeated phrases, offhand comments, meaningful place names, events tied to celestial events, and even the subtle shifting of a phrase's meaning over time.
What about dramatic irony, where the audience knows something the characters don't?
Absolutely. That's a great way to build suspense. Yeah. The players are watching the characters walk into danger, and they know something bad is about to happen.
Lastly, the article emphasizes the importance of personal stakes.
This is crucial. When the challenges and conflicts in the game tie into a character's backstory or relationships, it raises the stakes. It becomes more personal, more meaningful.
And the article had some ideas for creating those personal stakes, right?
Oh yeah. Family rivalries, revenge plots, ghostly memories, unfulfilled prophecies, vanished mentors, strained friendships, hidden lineage, resurrected enemies, family legacies, secret identities, lost loves, blurred dreams and reality, significant scars, personal talismans, and shadowy companions. When you tie the tension to these personal elements, it becomes much more powerful.
This has been a fascinating look at how to build and maintain tension. It's clearly a complex skill that involves a lot of different elements.
It's not just one thing. It's a combination of factors: uncertainty, time pressure, resource scarcity, mystery, foreshadowing, and personal stakes. And the storyteller is the one who brings them all together.
So what does this mean for our listeners? Well, it means that tension is key to creating engaging and memorable stories.
Absolutely. And it can be applied to so many different forms of storytelling, whether you're running a game, writing a book, or just telling a story to your friends.
Here's a thought-provoking question for you. Where else in your life, beyond games and stories, do you encounter tension? And how can understanding these techniques help you navigate those situations?
Great question. And a big thank you to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for the insightful article that inspired our discussion today.
If you've experienced a memorable moment of tension in a game or story, or if you have your own tips for building tension, please share them in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.